You are tuning into the Conjurers of Gnosis. Welcome to our sanguinary sect of worship. Welcome to the shipwreck we call Aeon Arcanum. Where the vultures gather, you will find us. Light a cigarette and we are there. Join us as we anathematize all of those who oppose us. We're broadcasting live from the virtual Garden of Eden as we chomp away at our poison red apples. Today is Aprilis the 30th in the year of our great power, 2013. We are proudly tempting tree-hugging hippie Eve wannabes, one show at a time. This is the AA for your soul, the Prep H for your hylic hemorrhoids, the Excedrin for your psychic migraine. Awaken, O sleeper! Rise from your grave, shed your illusory skin, and scream, blood, fire, death! We're not endorsed or funded by Michael the Archangel, nor do we accept sacrifice. Our guest today is a sojourner on the left-hand path, known to you Kenoma dwellers as Jeremy Crow. He's here to smack the generic brand Jesus blood out of your mouth, because you've got a fever and the only cure is more raging against heaven. Your ass can belong to Jehovah, but your ass belongs... Oh, that's totally wrong, but your ass belongs to bloody Lucifer today. Apparently you have two asses. Get lost with us in the Bermuda Triangle of discarded theses and dangerous ideas, where heretics aren't burned by fire, but consumed by gnosis. Get out your cakes of light and minces and your sacrificial baby, and let the show begin. I'm your host, James, alongside my co-hosts, Alex and Brad. And so it begins. How are you today, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
As you can see, I fucked up the intro. What a surprise. I knew I would, because I kept telling myself I would, but I realized it was my writing. I said it was supposed to be your soul. Your ass can belong to Jehovah, but your soul belongs to Buddy Lucifer.
You used the secret to screw up on that. You saw it in your mind first, and you manifested it.
Pretty much, right? Yeah, that is the secret, the law of attraction. How unattractive that was. Don't remember we did that intro with Keira Knightley's chest? God, that one was genius. All right, Jeremy, so tell us a little bit about yourself, however much you want to disclose, and what brought you to the philosophy of Luciferianism.
Yeah, well, I consider myself a left-hand path occultist, pretty much these days. Luciferianism is definitely still a label that I, resonate with, but it's kind of gone beyond that now. That's why I kind of like to say left-hand path occultist, but still, I consider myself Luciferian still, because the word Luciferian is obviously related to the word Lucifer, and Lucifer is just a Latin word that means bringer of light or light bearer, and light has always been a symbol for knowledge, and darkness a symbol of ignorance or the unknown, and Lucifer is kind of like the light in the darkness, right, where you have to delve into the unknown in order to gain that knowledge, that wisdom. And when I was young, I was brought up in the Catholic. Well, my dad and my mom wanted me to go to Catholic school, so they hadn't gotten me baptized or anything. So when I was about 5, I got baptized so that I could go to the Catholic school. Anyways, they did a pretty good job of indoctrinating me because I was really into it for a while. And the first mass that I saw, I thought, whoa, this is like some kind of magic that he's turning this, bread and wine into, body and blood of this immortal guy. And then we eat it. Whoa, that's pretty crazy. But this guy doesn't really seem like a magician. Like, he just seems like he's droning off. Yeah. As a little kid, I could tell that he was not even a real priest, right? As what you should think of a priest. So right. I thought, I want to do that. And I'm going to do it way better than that guy,
You're a rock
I'm gonna
star
do it.
priest.
Well, as a kid, that's what I kind of thought. I thought, I want to do it so good that when they put the host in their mouth, they're going to spit it out because it tastes so much like human flesh. And but yeah, I actually had like a calling to the priesthood for a while, and I really believed it for a while. And as I started, reading the Bible and seeing the Old Testament God is pretty brutal and
You're like,
you
wow, this
know.
guy's not a magician. He's just an asshole.
Pretty much. I said to my parents, I said, yeah, this guy seems more like a demon than a good guy, right? And they didn't have any way of answering me. I was like, look, he tells them to kill all these people that are innocent. And then, I could tell you a bunch of different examples of that.
Oh, but he killed him with laughter. It's okay.
Or he just told his people to do it, right? Meaning that
let my people go so I can kill them on my own.
It's a history of people using God to justify killing people and taking their land and stuff.
Right, that's how it always struck me that way, but I would just ignore that stuff. I was
know,
like, eh.
Somehow I was still
I'd say that's
able
just
to ignore
history.
that.
That's history. Because I was brought up Methodist, so I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's just history. That's normal. He told them to kill him because they deserved it.
Yeah, yeah, and you think, well, I may not understand it, but I'm just a human, and I have a limited human mind. But God, in His infinite wisdom, must have done it for a good reason because God is good, right?
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that, and then it makes you, ignore all these atrocious things,
Right. Yeah.
And
that's how the Highlight Kool-Aid works.
Yeah. So I still, I did question, but I still stuck with it for quite a while, and eventually, there was just too many conflicts between the way that I really believed and really felt about life and how the world works, and
Aeon Arcanum brought to you by Highlight Kool-Aid. 8% alcohol, 2% bullshit, and 90% venom. Don't we need that as an ad? We should actually have Brad make a picture for it.
What if you mixed it with rum? What would it be called?
I'm not sure. I'm sure we could think up something clever eventually. I'm not that witty.
The Cathar.
The
Cathar.
So, you know how in they call themselves the Parfaits, and with the Cathar priests, and of course the Parfait is a yogurt. So
right.
I don't know. I don't know if there's a connection there. It's just kind of funny.
Oh, etymology. Etymology, how I loathe thee. Etymology is hilarious because you can make etymology work however the fuck you want.
Well, I find it really interesting because we end up using a lot of words in ways that they weren't originally intended to be used.
Yeah, like to know someone. Think about it.
To know.
Yeah. What do they say? Then you will know, and what's know? Then you'll fuck.
Sex.
Yeah, exactly. And
you will come to fuck the truth.
And they demonize both knowledge and sex in in those stories.
Right, they stigmatize people too. Like if and we were talking about that last night, or I was talking about that with the Cathar. They stigmatize you and they make you think like, oh, it's unnatural for me to like vaginas. Like, wow, like I shouldn't be liking vaginas. That's weird. You know what I mean? Like they actually get you thinking shit like that. That's what they want you to think, and they want you to think like, oh, that's secular. This is secular arts of the devil, or whatever they come up with. I've heard a lot of stuff that I've personally heard.
Or masturbation guilt, or
like masturbation guilt, or say someone is brought up in the church and they were born homosexual, and they're brought up thinking, oh no, I need to repress that because
right,
that's not natural, and it's not natural to want to have 5 wives. That's not normal. It's like, well, shit. I mean, maybe it is for some people. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, well, I don't know what else to say about that. That isn't painfully obvious.
Yeah, right. So, Alex, why don't you and Brad, whoever wants to go first, shoot Jeremy a question.
Yeah, you call yourself a left-hand path occultist. Now, I was wondering what you thought about Aleister Crowley. I mean, first of all, like, I know you talked about that, but I was wondering if maybe were you part of the OTO at one point in your life, or I know you mentioned you were part of the Golden Dawns, but I was just curious whether you were part of that group or not.
Yeah, I was a member of the OTO. I was actually, for a while, I just hung out with a lot of OTO members, and would do just group ritual with them, just as side things that weren't OTO related specifically. But
like sacrificing babies and licking cats' butts.
Did you make it to the 11th degree?
No. I was officially a member for 9 months, but I was a very active member. We had a really, really active local body. It started out as the Oasis, which is the first level, and then we had gotten it up to the level of camp, and then it got shut down by head office for political reasons, which turned a lot of us off. And then a couple of the people stayed in, but most of us kind of left. Some people outright resigned, but most of us just went inactive, like myself. I'm inactive, but still technically, I guess, an inactive member. So, but yeah, I was a treasurer of a local body for probably about 6 months of my membership, and I, was an officer in an initiation, and things like that, and did a lot of the organization of the local body and activities and stuff. And we were very active. It was really fun.
So you went above the degree of Mernorable, right? I'm assuming.
That's the level that I was. I had been approved for the first degree, and was about to do it. I wanted to kind of wait 9 months specifically for symbolic reasons before I went into the first degree, and it just so happened that my local body got dissolved by the head office just before I hit the first degree, and I didn't feel like traveling to get the first degree after that, because I was kind of, peeved. Because basically there were two local bodies in the same city, but one of them had been inactive for probably at least a year. I think it was a lot more. And some of the people that wanted to do stuff created a new body in the same city, and it was very active. And when I joined it, it was very active, and it just got more active as we went. And we had a lot of public meetings and a couple private meetings, and yeah, it was just booming. It was crazy. It was really fun and productive, but then it got shut down in favor of the older one that wasn't doing anything. Because the older one was the one in which the current head at that time had been initiated here in Toronto. So
would you consider yourself a Thelemite by chance right now, or no? Or just
no.
Kind of a general kind of
no.
left-hand path?
I don't consider myself a Thelemite. And I don't think that Thelemite is necessarily left-hand path in the first place.
And why do you say that? I'm just curious.
It's like the Orthodoxy of Satanism.
Well, Crowley himself warned against black magic. He talked about, giving every last drop of yourself to the cup of Babylon at the very end, basically. And he talked about the Black Brothers, who wanted to maintain their own ego or sense of self, and not just give up everything into absolution with the all. Those are very right-hand path ideas. Absorbing yourself, eliminating all preference is another big practice that he talked about. One of the practices that he was notorious for, a lot of people like to cite, is where he had sex with a very old and ugly prostitute just to try and break his sense of preference. That's, in Buddhism and Hinduism, they do these types of practices too. Not usually as extreme, but on the left-hand path of Hinduism they do, but the thing is that in the East, the left-hand path is a little bit different than here. Over there, they're still kind of going toward the same end, ultimate union with divinity, but they're just using different methods to get there. Here, it's sort of different ends, in the right-hand path here in the modern Western usage. Right-hand path is more like dissolving your personal sense of self to become one with the all, or attaining nirvana, or
The pleroma.
any of those. Yeah, any of those things. It's a right-hand path, whereas the left-hand path is to become a god or a force of nature in your own right, and a persistent one, right? So in the actual writings of Crowley, at least, not necessarily what he practiced, but in the official religion of Thelema, it's right-hand path, and it's explicitly stated as right-hand path, although it can be modified slightly for left-hand path purposes. And there are a lot of elements that would normally be part of left-hand path, such as using these adversarial type figures, such as he's got the hymn to Lucifer, and he talks about Satan, and he identified himself with the great beast 666, and the Scarlet Woman was a big part of his theology, and things like that. Identifying with the bad guy is a big factor that normally identifies somebody as left-hand path, but in that case, if you actually look at the practices and what they're intended to do, they're more right-hand path, actually. But because it's so, because it uses so many ideas and concepts that are very natural to the left-hand path, there are people that use Thelema to try and become black brothers, which is not what Crowley intended it to be used as, but he did talk about how that can be done.
That's so
Yeah,
ghetto,
even
becoming
Anton
black
LaVey
brothers.
was surprised with the OTO because he expected to find orgies and stuff like that going on, and he found a bunch of initiates meditating, and he was very disappointed.
Yeah, well, you always hear about the OTO being like a satanic sex cult, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
we heard that in the news. I don't know.
that none of that happened.
But
at
really,
any
that's
of the
just
official
Samael
events
and
anyways.
War.
None of that stuff happened at any of the official events.
Well, I actually attended Gnostic Mass once, and they actually, I was kind of surprised, but the way they used that, and they actually used the priest and the priestess during the ritual. I guess the priest actually performed cunnilingus on the priestess. I was kind of like,
Oh.
yeah, I was like, wow, okay.
Listen, you sound like a doctor.
I know, right?
You didn't use the street slang for it.
I mean, it's common for nudity to be involved, but
right.
that's
Like Eyes
not...
Wide Shut. By the way, do you like that movie? What do you think of that movie?
That's a pretty cool movie.
Nice. So, oh, go ahead.
I saw it in
go
the
ahead.
theater when it came out.
I just had a thought. With Aleister Crowley and the Scarlet Woman, it kind of reminds me of Simon Magus and Helen for some reason, because it just seems like it's kind of, maybe, I don't know if he was consciously trying to copy Simon Magus and Helen, but it just seems like there's a interesting correlation between that. because that Gnostic couple they were also worshipped as Zeus and Athena back in, I don't know, second century. I thought it was kind of interesting, but I think there's a correlation there. But I mean, that's just a random thought I'm having. But also, I have another question for you. Now, what brought you to Luciferianism in general? I think what was the point in your life that brought you to becoming a Luciferian?
Well, at the time, I was actively involved with Freemasonry, and it wasn't a mainstream Freemasonic order. It was one of the co-Masonic orders, where they have men and women are equal. Men and women can equally reach the same levels of degrees, can hold the highest offices. In fact, the entire time I was a member, the two highest offices were both held by women.
Was it a speculative lodge?
Yeah, we didn't go out, breaking bricks and carving stone or anything like that. Or it was, speculative, not operative in that regards. I don't think that people really go out and do operative.
Well, I mean, like
Masonic
Stephen
lodges.
Holler of the Ecclesia Gnostica, he's a Freemason, and he says that most Freemasons today, they don't talk about esoteric subjects. They just it's basically like fraternity. They have like spaghetti dinners and stuff like that, and they don't talk about esoteric subjects.
That is actually true.
Yeah, I know what you're
Because I
saying.
actually know Masons that are like
And that's what I meant by a speculative lodge, because I guess there's speculative lodge where they're actually interested in the esoteric elements of Freemasonry.
Yeah, well, the ones that I actually was involved in two specifically. I was involved with a Scottish Rite-based one that also involved certain York Rite degrees incorporated into the structure. And the other one, so that was pretty mainstream style, but the only difference was that there were men and women equally within the lodge and in the same lodge together at the same time. Just like there's no big problem, right? And I don't think that there should be a big problem with that, but it was just normal. People weren't like overwhelmed with lust and not able to think about the ritual or anything ridiculous like some of the mainstream lodge members justify it with. It was fine. There was nobody going nuts with
the all male orders. Those all male orders were like a ancient Christian monastery or an Eastern Orthodox gay monk marriage thing going on, where they leave their inheritance to their fellow monk, which is really that shares a room with them all their life. I mean, and in Roman times, if you left the ancient times, if you left your inheritance, like that was considered like the height of homosexual, leaving your inheritance to another man that's like around your age and stuff like this, as an adult. It's not your son, So they had that kind of stuff. So there's parallels. There's definitely parallels with ancient Gnosticism and in the behaviors, and the way they organize groups.
Yeah, well, there's like I've heard of people talking about the connection between the Essenes and Freemasonry. But the other thing that I wanted to say was that I was also involved with the Ancient and Primitive Rite of Memphis Mizraim, Freemasonry, and that was also mixed gender. And both of those Freemasonic orders that I was involved with were explicitly esoteric oriented. The esoteric element was the main point of going to it. It wasn't the charity aspect, although there was some of that, or the fellowship, but there was that, of course, as well. But the main thing was the esoteric studies that went along with it.
So what's your take on the early chapters of Genesis? I know you've discussed that in videos on your channel. What's your take on that, and like kind of like the whole Christian view of Lucifer and Satan, freedom, and what maybe the etymology of Satan, those kind of things. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think that I mean, there's a couple different ways to take it. You can take it on a kind of a Manichaean level, where it's a fight against good and evil, where in my current interpretation, the god Elohim or gods Elohim would be the bad guy, essentially, and the slave owner, or the slave master,
right? Like the Pharaoh. That's why the Pharaoh is God embodied.
Adam,
right?
where are you?
Yeah, and the serpent was the hero. Broke them out of that, made them wake up and realize the truth of their situation, and take initiative for themselves. I think that it's very representative of how we are in our society, and for as long as these stories have been around, we've been in a situation where the people that are the leaders and are, profiting off of our existence in various ways.
It's like an allegory for real life.
Yeah, they want us to stay, childlike in our mentality and dependent on them as, protectors.
Like a dog.
And not, our chattel, right?
Right, yeah. That's very, very vampiric of you to say such a thing.
So, I think that a lot of the work that I am doing is to try and, make people realize that, and to, grow up, take responsibility for yourself, and just kind of sidestep all of that stuff, or actively fight against it if you have the inclination and the ability to. But to at least be aware of it, and to take measures that it's going to not affect your life as much.
What do you think about the ancient Sumerian tales of gods like Enki?
Yeah, that's what I'm really into these days, actually.
Yeah, I've been into that a lot. I read this book by David Cole that's really interesting on that. But the old E.A. Wallace Blood stuff, even though it's so outdated, it's actually pretty fascinating. So yeah, what do you think about Enki? Like, is there parallels with Enki and Lucifer, or Prometheus and Lucifer, like any different ancient gods?
Certainly. Well, Lucifer, while there is like a Roman god called Lucifer, it's more of an archetype. It's more of a title, or something an energy that you can embody, or a way of being. So Prometheus embodies it probably better than Lucifer, because, I mean, at least Prometheus was considered a hero. He was punished too, so that also adds that element to it. He was willing to suffer the consequences and that breaking rules would mean, in order to, get that message out, to get the truth out there, get the knowledge out there for people to empower themselves with.
Do you think the red pill in the Matrix was inspired by the apple?
Prometheus, suffer for your nose.
I never thought of it, but that's a good connection. Yeah.
It kind of seems like it. I was just thinking it today on the bus. I was like, is that why they made it a red pill? Is it because of the apple?
I thought it was because that was like one of them is like daytime NyQuil, and the other one is nighttime.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
One of them is blue and the other one's like orange, but they decided to make it red.
Were you ever a member of the Joy of Satan?
No.
Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
They're big into the whole Enki and Enlil thing.
I don't really know a lot about them. But I do think that Enki is the light bearer. He's the one that was teaching humanity how to survive all the different plagues and natural disasters that Enlil was unleashing upon them in order to destroy
like
them.
Yahweh in Genesis.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And and it's funny how the Jewish scriptures twisted that into God told the one righteous family, that it was going to come and they were saved. But in the original version, he was going to just destroy everybody, eliminate every single human. And then his brother came and told some people, and they were able to keep the human race alive. And the other ones too, like famine and things like that, but they didn't put that into the Noah story. They just kept it simple.
What do you think about Thoth?
Thoth, that would be the Egyptian, kind of Mercury or Hermes type figure. That would be like I do think of it is in some cases kind of like Lucifer.
He's kind of like Inky in a way too, bringing knowledge and
yeah,
all the different crafts. And then in the book, like the Book of Enoch, right? You see this idea that like they talk about these angels that they kind of describe the same way as they describe Cain and other people of his lineage in Genesis, being metal workers and all this stuff, right? And they brought the crafts of metal work, and they're the fallen angels, and all these stories link together so well. I think it's way more fascinating when you actually see them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up reading the Bible and absorbing and being influenced by all those stories, and I think it's really hard to kind of just dump all of that. You can't. Right. It's impossible. You've been imprinted with it. Right.
You've got to learn to see it a new way, or
it's empowering to be able to kind of understand it in a way that actually is really meaningful, and reflects reality in a really, really well, and gives you an inspiration to become more responsible for your own life and what you're going to experience in your life and how you choose to act, and all those things without having to believe that there's some kind of parent ghost that's watching over you, like Santa,
no,
something, and you get a burning coal in your stocking when you die if you're bad, and you get the gifts of heaven if you're good.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it all goes back to the second creation story in Genesis. Like, the whole story is like, don't question, don't disobey, don't dissent, don't complain, don't gripe. It's like, don't do anything.
You're with us, so you're against us.
Parameters of slavery. So, and if you do, you'll be beaten to submission to lie. So.
Yeah.
I think the Pharaoh just wrote the whole thing. I think Pharaoh wrote the whole Old Testament, man. Some Hebrew like Moses was just some pharaoh that was like he was like the anti-pharaoh, like an anti-pope, but he is like the opposing pharaoh. He had two competing pharaohs, and he is like, he used his all Hebrew story or whatever the fuck he made up, That's what it seems like.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was plagiarized, as we know.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, do you agree that the Book of Job is the worst explanation for suffering that you've ever read? Where he's questioning God, it's like, why are you doing this to me? And he's like, shut up, were you here when I created the world? Don't question me.
It's a pretty interesting book.
That's like how he talks to Isaiah and stuff too, right?
He creates the light and evil. That's Jehovah's.
Oh yeah. He creates good and evil, and then Irenaeus says, "No, our God's not responsible for evil." This is a disclaimer on the Old Testament.
I'm glad that book made it into the Bible.
Yeah, it also talks about the king of Babylon as well. Of course, he's referenced as Lucifer.
In Isaiah, yeah.
In Isaiah, yeah. Yeah, but Job is really interesting because that Brad brought up. It's like all about you're gonna obey what I say, and then if you don't like my judgments, then you can go fuck off.
Then hit the bricks, kid. See, yeah.
See,
See?
look, Satan, look, he's still bowing before me.
I'm a Gnostic, see?
So he's still licking my balls. See.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about the conversation between Satan and Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew?
It's himself.
You think he's
the
talking
same
to himself?
person. Yeah, he's talking to himself, obviously. I think it's...
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like how I think some days, where I'm like, I've got my one voice saying one thing and the other one saying that, and I'm just looking at, the alternatives and whatever, But that story's weird though, because if you look in the Clementine Homilies or Recognitions, one of them, they actually add more to that story. I need to look into that later for our future Simon Magus episode, but they add some stuff into that. It's pretty interesting.
Really?
But we won't get into that. But I want Alex
this is what Jesus should have said.
Right. They add to
actually, it's interesting, the idea of Satan being the shadow of Jesus.
Right.
And
like
what is the
Daemon.
shadow? All of the parts of yourself that you kind of denied,
Yeah.
or are afraid of. And he was afraid of his own power, in a sense, right? He was afraid,
right, because you're afraid you're gonna do that. Like you deny. You're like, oh, I'm not doing a terrible job at work. No, it'll never catch up to me. I'm not drinking too much. That'll never catch up to me. And then it does. It is kind of like a voice like that. So okay, segueing from that, what do you think of the daimon, like you find in Plato and Socrates, or the familiar spirit of Simon Magus? Those are kind of the same thing.
The holy guardian angel and Philemon.
Right, the guardian angel.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of that concept?
Because
that's pretty much tied to what you're saying.
I definitely have a lot of ideas about that. Before we go on to that, and it ties right in, I want to say that, how on the cross, when Jesus is on the cross at the end, and they say, at least in Catholicism, they say that he took on all of the sins of the world, right? So that's basically the shadow. He's like the animus.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
And he's like the spirit of the world, and he's taking upon the shadow of the world, and he's integrated. He's absorbed it. He's taken it on, and he's integrated it. So Jesus and Satan become one in that moment, right. And I guess in that sense, and in that point, he's complete in himself, and he doesn't need any kind of guardian spirit or genius or whatever. And he says, "Oh God, why have you forsaken me?" Because he's on his own. He's complete now on his own. Right. In a sense, he's attained kind of that.
Yeah, Carl Jung was actually friends. I think he was a Catholic priest, and the Catholic priest was really intrigued with his ideas about like the quaternity instead of a trinity. But then when he started hearing about Jung's ideas about Satan being the shadow of Christ, then he started having disagreements with him. He's like, no, I cannot accept that.
Yeah, I think essentially, to become complete and whole person, you have to accept the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force.
I love it. May the 4th be with you. I can't wait for the May the 4th. We have to do an episode on May the 4th. I want that in the intro. That's actually the Star Wars holiday.
I mean, don't deny any part of yourself. Just understand it and give it expression in a way that will further you.
Yourself.
Yeah. You gotta express it in a way that'll further you, and not let it control you.
Right. Learn to highlight your strengths and learn to accept your weaknesses.
Yeah, and even if it's some people will even get obsessed with something that they think is all altruistic or whatever, and it may be.
Cough,
But
I ran.
that doesn't mean. But that doesn't mean that you should be obsessed with it. Everything in its proper time and place.
Right, yeah, don't be obsessed with anything. It's very stoic of you, everything you just said.
Well, it's not like how the fourth way sees ritual and psychodrama anyway, is that instead of actually going out and attacking somebody because you're frustrated, you use destruction rituals and stuff like that in order to express that energy instead of
my destruction ritual is Call of Duty.
I actually kind of agree with that statement in regards to, God and the devil being kind of on the same playing field, I guess, or the devil being the shadow of God. Because even if you look at Valentinian theology, you kind of see the demiurge, who, or the Valentinians, they refer to them as the right, and on the left is of course the devil, and his archon. So
Hades and Zeus.
Hades, yeah. So I think.
Or Judas Thomas and Didymus, Judas Thomas and Jesus.
Well, yeah, I was kind of hinting at it earlier, but when I was talking about there's more than one ways to kind of look at it, and you can look at it in a Manichaean and a dualistic fight against good and evil, but you can also look at it in a more holistic way where the demiurge isn't necessarily bad. It's just a part that's gotten isolated. It's gotten kind of shunned or broken off, in a sense, from or rejected, and it just really just wants to reunite. It just kind of really all it wants to do is to be loved.
Yeah, it's that part of yourself that you learned to ignore when you were brought up Orthodox.
Yeah,
the part of yourself that you repressed at church.
And it ends up acting out in a lot of ways like a spoiled child.
Yeah, then you become you become a man whore at the bar, or, whatever, or a drunk, or a gambler. Oh man, there's too many.
So ultimately, and I think that The Matrix did a really good job of portraying this, although it was still subtle enough that a lot of people didn't get it, and still never
will. How could
will.
the first Matrix movie be so genius and the other two suck so bad?
Well, the first one was very Manichaean and it was easy to understand, and then as you go further, it gets more abstract and more. It's less good versus evil, and you start to realize that there's layers and layers of complexity, and so many different shades of gray, and ultimately, in the end, it's all about reconciliation among all of the parts, and really, Smith ends up being, obviously, the shadow of Neo.
Were you just thinking of Batman?
No, Bane is the human guy that gets taken over by.
Oh, okay,
Smith
okay.
in Zion.
Right. I forgot about
so that's why I was thinking about that.
But Batman's very esoteric too. At least the last three of them were.
Yeah, those
are the
really
last
good ones.
two in the trilogy.
It's very theosophical.
Oh yeah. What's your take on Helena Blavatsky, aka Helena Troy?
Well, my bishop, when I was actively involved with the Gnostic Church, he was vice president of the Theosophical Society of Canada, and so I ended up attending a bunch of the meetings of the Theosophical Society and studying a bunch of things like that, but
I just freaked out because I felt like there was an earthquake happening in here. Like, I saw my coffee cup roll, and I saw some other stuff. I'm like, whoa, what? I thought it's because I kicked my desk. Then I kicked my desk again. I'm like, it doesn't shake that much, does it? And it didn't. But now it's doing it. Very strange. Okay. So if we had
Anyways,
we had a
yeah.
quake the other night where it just went boom like that. It just felt like it like threw me up in the air, and it was only like a split second, you know, and then it was over with, and it woke me up. I slept through the Northridge quake, and now I'm all paranoid about earthquakes. Especially because I work in a warehouse, and it's like there's shit stacked so high, you know. Scares me.
Yeah, so I ended up was exposed to a lot of theosophical stuff, and one of the Masonic orders that I was involved with was very involved with theosophy. A lot of the top members were in the esoteric school within Theosophical Society, and they didn't eat meat and things like that because you have to be a vegetarian to be a member of the inner circle of Theosophical Society and things like that. So I was exposed to a lot of that stuff, but I just never got into it. I attended meetings here in Toronto for a while too, and the guys were okay, but I just couldn't get into it. I don't know. It might have been all the Eastern stuff. I do like a lot of Eastern things, but just using a crapload of terminology.
Yeah.
Are you eagerly anticipating the coming of Maitreya?
No. Didn't he come and go? Didn't he come and then he rejected it?
Yeah,
no, wasn't that Krishnamurti? He was supposed to be Maitreya, and then he did not. And then he
exactly.
Yeah.
They groomed him to become Maitreya, and he ended up saying no.
Well, when he was young, he was very well groomed.
Yeah, now Krishnamurti's more of like an atheist now.
I feel like the way he talks to people when he's interviewed is hilarious because like him and Ayn Rand basically are like the same pompous assholes. Like basically him and Ayn Rand are just pompous pricks to me. They're like, well, no, you don't understand anything I'm saying. No, well, clearly you have one brain cell in your head. Like that's like how they talk to people. I'm like, no wonder they can't get their point across because they spend all their time insulting people. They just remind me of a really angry, disgruntled customer who's not really a customer, they're a loiterer, and they never really buy anything, but then they tell you about how, the company needs to improve this and improve that, but they don't do anything to improve the company themselves.
You were the chosen one!
Ayn Rand was on drugs quite a bit when she was interviewed, so that explains some of that.
Yeah, she looks like a fucking troll.
Yeah.
Okay, but now that we're done insulting Ayn Rand and other people, which makes us look very,
hey,
very
you better
bad.
be careful if you talk about Ayn Rand around Robert M. Price, because he's an objectivist.
Oh, no.
Really? Uh-oh.
At least he doesn't worship at the shrine of the severed penis of Rasputin.
Well, I was reading his blog a few days ago, and he's an objectivist.
Interesting.
There's too much temptation to be corrupt, and that's why there's no such thing as a free market.
Right.
It can't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't make
People
any sense.
will always be corrupt. You have to take that into consideration in the equation.
It's like when people get into that, it's kind of like a dualistic idea, actually. It's like this black and white thinking people get trapped in where they're like, well, there's only one thing and there's only the other. It's like if we were to say, well, there's just Gnosticism and Orthodoxy. There's no shades of gray in each field, but there is,
Yeah, for sure.
There's a left-hand and right-hand path in both, as we're finding out right now.
Well, have you read The Ego on Its Own by Max Stirner? He was a real big influence on Ayn Rand, and he's basically like an extremist egoist.
No.
I haven't either.
But I do think that the ego has gotten a bad rap.
Oh, yeah, no, the ego is a good thing, in a sense. It's like if it's under control, like if you understand it.
I mean, the original...
I guess that's how you could say it.
The original way that it was used, I mean, that's a concept Freud came up with, or that's a term that he used to describe the part of yourself that is unique in the world.
Right.
Like the id is basically.
If you didn't have an ego, you wouldn't get out of bed every morning.
If you didn't have
Well,
an
I think
ego,
it's
you'd be
interesting
dead.
that Freud thought that the ego is basically a center that was created between the tension of the id and the superego. So it's basically
Right.
not like a thing by itself. It's created by the tension of the opposites of the id and the superego.
But,
Right, so it's kind of like the Hegelian dialectic. Like you got the thesis, antitheses, and you've got the
Synthesis, yeah.
The synthesis, yeah.
but the thing is, the superego is transpersonal, so it's the same for everybody essentially. The id, it's the innate animal instinct of our species, so that's not really that unique either. The way we deal with these various conflicts is the ego. It's who we are. Right?
It's gnosis instead of it's science. It's gnosis.
So I think that that is the part of yourself that is the most precious. It's the most unique. The rest of it's a dime a dozen. It's like how many seeds fly off of a tree before one of them germinates.
Right. It's a good way to
Yeah.
put it.
Yeah, and whenever people start talking about killing your ego and all this kind of stuff, I mean, it might make sense maybe on a symbolic level, but when people talk about killing your ego, I mean, it actually kind of means like killing yourself. Like, I'll just took a gun.
Yeah, it's like
mouth
killing
and
all your
blow my brains
ambition and
Yeah. Like the thing is, this is one of the things that I think that a lot of the stories of the Old Testament were designed to do. And this concept of kill the killer, which is, they say the ego is the one that kills your sense of bliss that comes through eliminating all preference, right?
Right, it gives value to life.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a fucking dystopian
It's why you
future
enjoy
that they're trying to
Coca-Cola over
advocate.
Pepsi or Pepsi over Coke.
Like, you imagine a movie in which all people have eliminated all sense of personal preference.
Oh, sounds like Equilibrium.
Yeah, or any of those.
Yeah, this dystopian futures.
Yeah,
I don't think Crowley crossed the
Nazism.
abyss because he came back and it seemed like he had plenty of ego.
That's true.
Yeah, that's why I said earlier, at least in theory, Thelema is a right-hand path. Not necessarily in practice.
Right, and everything is so different in theory than practice, and I don't know, it gets crazy. I mean, even all the sciences are like that,
Mm-hmm.
It kind of goes back to Lucifer. Like, the Lucifer legend never really made much sense to me. Like, so you have Jehovah who creates an angel. The angel gets sick of being his slave, so he rebels and he gets cast out of heaven.
Yeah, and then the whole time, like,
supposed to sympathize with Jehovah, not Lucifer.
like, when did this occur, too? Like, this is what makes no sense. Like, it's either, like, you have this idea that in Genesis, like, Adam and Eve, this is occurring in time, or this realm or something, and then that's occurring in the other realm during that time in eternity. Or there's the idea, like, if you were to read Revelation, you'd say, oh, well, if that part, like Revelation 12, if that's talking about Jesus being born, oh, then the fall from heaven happened at the birth of Jesus. Or that war in heaven happened at the birth of Jesus. Wait, didn't it happen to Adam and Eve? Wait, are you saying Jesus was born in the time of Adam? Wait, is he Adam? Oh, yeah, he's the first Adam, but he's the second Adam. So you see stuff like that, and it's all kind of confused. It's kind of like all this crap's happening at the same time in this this writer's mind, whoever's writing Revelation. It's very strange, like it just doesn't fit into time and space.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the language of the birds, or the green language.
Yeah.
It's like the language of the subconscious,
Right.
Symbols.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been kind of like my problem with Orthodox Christianity or Judeo-Christianity. I mean, it's kind of more of a religion of slave mentality, in my opinion. And I think a lot of, people on the left hand will agree with me on that. I mean, like, what being would want to lick God's balls for all eternity,
And 24 hours a day they were saying, holy, holy, holy Lord.
Yeah, holy, 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 holy art thou,
Holy hell, this is boring.
No, I don't see why anybody would want to join a church, because you can't have your own opinions at all.
Right.
You're just
You can have them
worshiping God all day, 24 hours a day.
What? That's
like,
what they repress the most in church.
Is that? Jesus.
That's kind of like, think about it. Your opinions are kind of part of your familiar spirit in a way too. It's you know, you've got these or your Atlantean spirit if you want to get into Socrates, but it's kind of like those opinions are such a big, you know, part of yourself. And when you're at church, you're having to repress the opinions, so therefore you're repressing yourself altogether, you know?
Well, it's about conformity. I mean, why else would they even call you a sheep? Outright. That's one of the things.
Yeah, they outright call you that.
Me.
It's funny because there's this stuff about goats and sheep and all that stuff, right? They make this goat like this bad thing. But in the Old Testament, the goat is what they sacrifice to get rid of sins. They don't sacrifice a sheep. The goats are the martyrs, not the sheep.
So whether they're of the creek.
True.
Speaking of goats, what do you think about the archetype of the horned one? Do you think that's a very strong Luciferian symbol? Because I know this book talks about it quite a bit.
That's very inky-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a symbol of animal lust in a lot of ways. And I think that that's a very powerful force that has been repressed by organized mainstream religion in general. And so I think it's a very important archetype to, you know, Bacchanalia, go for it, you know. get drunk and naked and dance to hand drumming, drum till your hands bleed. You know,
sounds like Venice Beach.
It's good.
Or as Carl Jung said, "What you resist will persist."
Words of wisdom.
I love that picture, Brad. By the way, hysterical.
So you know, a lot of people they say, "Oh, I'm not left-hand path. I'm middle path," and that's I think one of the unfortunate things about the term left-hand path. The term left-hand path essentially just means that you're willing. Well, you're willing to look into the dark side as well. It doesn't mean that you shun the light. It just means that you're not afraid of the dark either.
Wait, didn't Inky have ram horns? Ram horns.
Yeah, Inky was like the Capricorn symbol.
Yeah.
Essentially, right? The mergoat. Wasn't it like a mergoat?
Something like that, yeah.
And he lived in like a subterranean.
Yeah, he was the Lord of the
underwater
Abyss.
Cave.
You know.
Oh, that sounds like Azazel.
Yeah, exactly. Azazel, so below.
Or, you know, Hades.
Right. Yeah, I'm seeing all the parallels even more now that we're having like a discussion. Now that I'm not just thinking of it in my own head and reading E.A. Wallace Budd or something, you know?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Satan and Lucifer these days, you know, originally I thought of it more Manichaean, but now I think of it more holistically, where I think of Satan is like the one that's kind of guarding all of these things that you've repressed, that your conscious mind can't handle the knowledge of at this, or when it was at the time that it was repressed, you couldn't handle it at least, and it just stays there, and Satan is kind of like Hades, or the gatekeeper that's blocking these things, keeping these things underground so that there isn't some sort of zombie apocalypse.
Oh no, the toll houses.
Destroy the living, right? It's so that it's to protect you. Right. Your shadow is your holy guardian angel. Right. What, you know, think of what a holy guardian angel is.
Yeah, he's like a psychopath.
He's like your own personal Apophis.
Yeah, well, okay, so just strip out all of tradition or anything like that and just try and break it down to first principles. So
Right.
what is the holy guardian angel supposed to do? Your personal holy guardian angel. It is basically there to protect you from dangers unknown to you, and you barely ever are aware of its presence. You know.
I've actually been aware of its presence. Well, Alex knows. I said it on the episode last night too, but yeah, I've been aware of it. It's pretty crazy. But that's the only time
that's the concept, though, right?
Yeah.
But that's the concept, though, is that it's something that you're barely ever aware of, and it protects you from dangers that you're not even aware of either. So it's entirely in the shadow. I mean, if you think about it.
It actually appears as a shadow too, by the way.
It is the shadow.
Right. It appears as a shadow of yourself, but 3D shadow.
So what does the shadow do? What, in Jung's terms? It's basically the part of yourself that has been repressed because you couldn't handle it at the time that it made itself aware to you. It's truths that you couldn't handle when you became aware of it at the time.
Right.
But not necessarily. You could maybe now handle it if you were able to dredge it up.
What's weird is you can actually not only experience it, you can conceptualize it on your own, through intellectual thought. You can experience it as a reality, and you can actually experience it through tarot, because it's kind of like a deep contemplation. So you can get it from tarot too, insight into it. Yeah. And it's kind of like seeing the future. It's like prophecy.
What are your thoughts on dream interpretation?
There's a lot of different ways you can.
Hold up.
There's a lot of different ways that you can, symbolically, call up Leviathan with a hook,
Right.
As in Job, he says, "Who dares, draw up Leviathan with a hook?" Well, that's what we're doing when we kind of delve into the shadow and try and bring a soul fragment, essentially, a shamanistic soul retrieval type thing where you draw something out of the shadow and you bring it into the light and you're able to integrate it, healthfully. And but the thing is, the reason why the shadow exists is to protect you.
Right, exactly.
It's your guardian. If it wasn't there, you'd be insane.
Right.
You couldn't handle it at the time when you first encountered it, and that's why it turned into the shadow.
Oh, I couldn't handle it when I first encountered it. It scared the crap out of me.
But I mean, the original Inception event. You're re-encountering it.
Right.
What you're talking about. But it was
right. Well, you re-encounter it while you live what they say too. That's what's even creepier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you keep repeating things.
Right. Like you get deja vus too.
You're compelled to repeat certain actions or patterns in your life because you can't understand it, right?
Right.
But if you're able to, because you're afraid to understand it, you're afraid of the implications of understanding it, and that's what you have to be brave enough to do. And left-hand path doesn't mean that you shun the light and you're just this dark, vampire bat or whatever. It just means that you're not afraid of delving into the dark. Really, it should be called the middle path or the complete path.
I'm curious too. Do you know if there's any kind of significance of of phosphorus? Phosphorus, like the actual compound phosphorus, yeah, or phosphoros in Greek. Okay, first of all, here's a little interesting thing here. I can't remember his name, but I have a book that talks about blunders and breakthroughs in science. I think that's actually what it's called, the book. And they talk about how phosphorus, I'm talking about, science here, phosphorus was discovered by boiling urine. So that's kind of amusing. That's how it was actually discovered. This guy boiled urine because he's looking for the philosopher's stone, and he got phosphorus.
Yeah, I've heard of using urine in the production of the stone. No.
Right. And then
There's different
back in the day,
ways
it
to
was
go about it.
undetectable, so they could poison people easy with it. Boil some urine, poison the guy. You know?
Oh, wow.
You know? So, but do you think there's any kind of connection between, like, you know, the chemical phosphorus and like alchemy
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there's some kind of
Luciferian
connection. I
like
don't really.
philosophy?
Yeah, I wish I had something cool to say about that.
I'm kind of wondering. That's
yeah,
something
I do
like
think there is
you
some
should look
kind of
into that,
connection.
and we should talk about that next time.
I do think there's some kind of connection with phosphorus, and there's definitely people out there that know about that.
Oh yeah, there's probably someone that's got it.
Mm.
So Brad, you were cutting out there. Let's see if we can get you on. Brad, are you there?
Uh-oh.
This is
Down
your
here.
brain. This is your
There
brain
you
on the Three Stooges. Any questions? Okay, Brad, what were you trying to ask earlier? Because your mic like scrambled.
I was just curious on your thoughts on the Tree of Life. Do you think that traditionally the left-hand path corresponds to the left pillar of severity and the right-hand path corresponds to the right pillar of mercy? And then, like, I know the Golden Dawn, don't they consider themselves to be a middle pillar system?
Yeah, I don't think that the left-hand path and right-hand path actually relate to the left pillar or the right pillar of the Tree of Life. You know, I don't even necessarily think that the Tree of Life is an accurate representation of the multiverse. You know, it's interesting, but it's a very hierarchical setup. And is that really how it works? I mean, I know that we as humans and a lot of other creatures naturally form themselves into hierarchies, but you know,
Monkey see, monkey do.
yeah, this is like
Monkey fling his own poo.
You know, it's a very linear map of the multiverse. It's a model of the multiverse, right? It's why,
Which makes
you know,
no sense. A linear map for a multiverse.
I think of it more in cycles, right? I
Right.
don't think of it necessarily as a tree or a ladder of, you know, of course there's the ladder, the Chaldean ladder of lights kind of thing, where it's basically it's a ripoff of the Chaldean ladder of lights. Essentially, it's a plagiarization. And they reformatted it. They threw some of their own ideas into it, yeah. But it's still the same sequence of moon, you know, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and, you know, the zodiac and beyond, right? That was a Chaldean, which was basically Sumerian, Babylonian stuff that they took on and they incorporated into their own mythology. And I don't think that necessarily it reinforces the idea of, you know, authority and regimentation. And I want to practice something more chaotic and anarchical. So I don't really.
So are you a
study...
chaos magician? Because isn't the Tree of Life considered to be like the cornerstone of Western occultism?
Yeah, I used to be a Kabbalist for a long time. Like I said, I was involved with the Golden Dawn and the OTO for two examples of organizations that I was involved with. And both of them are big time into the Tree of Life. And so I studied it for a long time, and I used it in my ritual practices, you know, huge. But I've moved away from that. Because, yeah, I do consider myself a chaos magician in a lot of ways. I think that a lot of Luciferians resonate with the idea of being a chaos magician because they study comparative mythology and they'll recognize the light bearer archetype within the various different stories and find inspiration in the different ways that it manifests.
Right, I don't even identify as a Luciferian or anything, but I recognize that all the time. I mean, I've always been, at least since I don't know, since I was in high school, into occult stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been able to spot that archetype, if you want to call it an archetype, which is pretty much what it is. And so I tend to see those connections. Yeah, archetype. Oh yeah, that's very Jungian of me. Where I'm supposed to be a dickhead, and here I am being a Jungian.
Dickheads of Gnosis. Philip K. Dick was actually really big into Carl Jung.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah,
I guess technically I'm still a dickhead.
So when people who are into like Satanism and Luciferianism and left-hand path philosophies, Setianism or whatever, when they study like the Qliphoth or the inverse tree of life and the tunnels of set and things like that, it's interesting because but it's still within that same paradigm. You're still working within that paradigm. I want to do something new and different, and I want to try new forms, and I want to create new formulas that I can share with people that aren't based off of these right-hand path organized religious, the mystic branch of an organized right-hand path religion,
So is there a big difference between Satanism and Luciferianism? Are there similarities? What's the deal behind that?
Yeah, that's definitely a big question that a lot of newcomers have for sure, and definitely a lot of people listening to this are probably wondering that.
Mm-hmm.
Satanism. What we think of as Satanism now, and when most people say they're a Satanist, they're usually part of the Anton LaVey camp, or school of thought, and because it's a very popular, he popularized the term Satanism, with his Satanic Bible and his Church of Satan, and it's an atheistic organization. They do not worship Satan.
Exactly.
And that's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is that
it's very misleading.
Satanists are not Satan worshippers, Christians are Christ worshippers, so it's an easy mistake to make.
Right, they're Satanists, not Satanians. Satanians? That sounds so cheesy.
And, even like Luciferians don't typically worship Lucifer. It's like even the people, there are devil worshippers, there are Satan worshippers specifically. I've met people that literally worship Satan, but there are a lot of people that are more philosophical in their
I've met plenty of people that actually worship the devil. Being a metalhead, I've been to so many metal shows. I meet crazy people like that all the time that like have tattoos all over, cut themselves, and have crazy piercings, and they're like all coked out talking about how they worship the devil. I've seen them do rituals like on their own, just in the middle of a fucking crowd. They're weird. Some people are a lot of them are very sadist. They like to go around and like stab people in mosh pits and stuff.
Jesus.
That's like a devil worshipping pastime, and they'll still call themselves that, though, Satanists or something. But then you go, Anton LaVey, they're like, what the fuck that guy. They're like, I'm worshiping the guy with horns, dude. What the fuck are you talking about, man? And they're on some psychedelic, and they see you as like, an angel or a devil or something. 'Cause they're tripping on shit, But that's the life of a metalhead, man.
So I think a big way that you can kind of differentiate between Satanism and Luciferianism is just in the label itself. I mean, the word Satan is a Hebrew word that means adversary.
Right.
Some people said accuser, but the more typical translation into English is adversary.
Right, that's more like when they try to go into using the word diablos and stuff like that, and they get into the tempter, or the accuser, the slanderer.
It kind of means enemy, and it kind of means rebel.
Right.
So,
yeah, rebel too.
And the word Lucifer, as I mentioned before, it means bringer of light or light bearer. And so I think one of the differences between Satanism and Luciferianism is that in the people that identify with the word Lucifer or Luciferian typically will be interested in sharing their knowledge and not just kind of hoarding it for their selfish purposes.
So when it comes to, and this is kind of going off subject, but I'm curious to know, when it comes to like the Nag Hammadi, since we're Gnostics, so we're gonna ask you some Gnostic stuff too. But
yeah. When
it comes to, I mean, even though Luciferianism is very Gnostic, it's just a different way of approaching kind of the same concepts, But when it comes to like, say, the Nag Hammadi library, do you find any interest in that? And if so, do you have a favorite text or anything like that in it?
Yeah, definitely. A big part of what led me to Luciferianism is also the Gnostic Church. While I was involved with the Freemasonic stuff, I started to kind of understand Lucifer in a different way, but I wasn't quite comfortable with it yet. But when I started studying Gnosticism, and I actually got really intense about that, and was studying directly under the Archbishop of Canada for the Gnostic Church of the Glorious Christ in Canada. He was the Archbishop, and it was associated with a lot of other Gnostic churches around the world. And and I studied directly under him. I went through all of the minor orders and major orders up to and including priest. And nice. So I'm an ordained priest in the Gnostic Church of the Glorious Christ. And I was active in that for about 5 years. But because of my Luciferianism, and I had to end up basically keeping that quiet because the congregation didn't understand what I was going on. They couldn't understand what that kind of stuff meant, so I had to keep that stuff kind of to myself, and it just felt
strange.
It kind of felt dishonest,
Yeah, it does. It kind of sounds disingenuous too.
Yeah, and the same thing. Yeah, and the same thing happened within the Scottish Rite-based Freemasonic order that I was involved with. A lot of the people at the very, very top, the top two people in it that I mentioned before, both women, I talked to them, the very top two people, and they both, understood Lucifer in the same way as I understood it, and they wanted me to stay quiet about it amongst the members because they were afraid that the members would get freaked out, and if they knew that the people at the top were, but it wasn't all the people at the top. There were some 33rd degree Masons that I approached about the subject, and they seemed to have no idea what I was talking about. And when I started explaining it, some of them seemed to get really kind of surprised and worried or whatever. Like they're like, "Oh, what? Yeah, I never really thought of that connection," And and some of them got a little bit worried, like 33rd degree Masons. So I noticed that it's not all of the.
Yeah, it's not a universal thing.
It's not all of the Masons that are Luciferian. Not even all of the top Masons are. Just some of them.
Right, because they allow you to come in with your own persuasions too.
Yeah, you can be at the very, very top and be a Christian and not be a Luciferian at all.
What did you find?
You could be a Luciferian at the very bottom, because I wasn't even a Master Mason at the time, and they let me in on it when I, confronted them directly with it, and I said, I think that this symbol means that, and I think it's connected to Lucifer because of this and because of that and because of that. And then they admit it. They're like, oh, so you figured it out. But don't go around telling it. Don't go around blabbing about it because people are going to be afraid that
well, that's classic occultism right there.
And I thought it's not honest, you know? It's dishonest. You all these people that are Christians that are contributing their labor, their energy, their time, and their money to this organization, and the people at the top are Luciferians, and if they knew that, they wouldn't be supporting this organization. And so, you know, but they don't talk about it because they want that support. And I wasn't into it. I was like, you know what, I'm out of here.
Oh, I love how you just brought the truth to light, something I've known for a long time, but without ever being involved in any of the organizations, I was able to figure that out, you know, just from looking into the ancient Gnostics, because some of the ancient Gnostics did the same thing.
So you hear a lot of, like, conspiracy theorists say,
oh, yeah,
if you're in the 33rd degree, you're a Luciferian.
Yeah,
not all of them are.
That's all baloney.
Not all of them are. It's just...
Only the smart ones are that aren't symbolically retarded.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm going through all these rituals and I'm still a Christian!
It kind of reminds me of that Albert Pike quote. Everyone, claims that he's like a, big Luciferian and all this kind of stuff, but it kind of reads more
Albert Pike?
like a Albert Pike. He reads more like a pagan philosopher to me. I don't think he's.
Oh yeah.
He's got some interesting ideas, and the way he talks about Lucifer is more in line with, that Gnostic interpretation of Lucifer as the light bringer.
What did you find in the Nag Hammadi library? In specific that you found.
Thomas was my favorite. That's
like my favorite too, actually.
They're like Zen poems, and the first time you read them, you're like, "What in the heck are they?"
Well, what ideas on
start to kind of be like, "Oh,
What ideas
really
on
cool
like
idea.
What ideas on like Lucifer, Satan, and the serpent did you keep with you from the Nag Hammadi text, or maybe the Gospel of Judas, or just anything
like the hypostasis of the archons?
One of Alex's favorites.
That one is really cool, and another one that's very similar, on the origins of the world, I think it's called.
Another one of his favorites.
Yeah, I'm
so
actually
both
writing
of those are very cool, and I found both of those very inspiring. And I like the idea that there's this God Most High, and it's kind of like what I think of as
God Most High.
I don't like to talk about the concept of the higher self. I don't associate the Holy Guardian Angel with the higher self. Holy Guardian Angel is the shadow. The part that is repressing the disturbing...
it's the true self.
Or fearful parts of yourself that you can't accept yet.
Right.
That's the Holy Guardian Angel. It's protecting you from those things that you can't handle or you couldn't handle at one point. And it's up to you to go back through it and deal with them as you can, because now you can probably deal with most of it. If you don't deal with it all at once, you deal with it a bit at a time. But where was I going with this?
Okay, we lost track. Hey, don't feel bad. That happens here at Aeon Arcanum. The Bermuda Triangle of dangerous ideas. So,
the idea that there's a God Most High, and I think of it kind of as like the complete harmonized self. I don't think that there's a higher self and a lower self.
I like that you picked the word harmonized. That's interesting because in music, being the Pythagorean I am, the musician, with music we have the triad, which is a harmony. It's a chord. It's three notes that are in harmony, right? A root, a third, and a fifth, or perfect fifth. When you get that, you're in harmony, and then you drop. I think it's the fifth, and then you become. No, it's not the fifth. It's the third. You change the third, and the third it will make it disharmonic or not harmonic, right? Aharmonic, and so that makes it dissonant. What you would call dissonant. And so when you've got those three notes, they're working in harmony. It's kind of weird because then you've got that Trinity idea in there. This harmony.
Starting to sound like Paul Foster Case.
Who's that?
The head of the DOTA.
Yeah.
Or the founder of the DOTA. The builders of the Aleister.
Yeah, I'm actually very secretly Pythagorean. I don't like to talk about it a lot, but and I have grimoires for music. I actually have grimoires. I have them.
Yeah, you're
like
a
4 of them.
Pythagorean because they're being persecuted to this day.
No, we're still Pythagoreans. We just don't talk about it.
Yeah, I'm involved in a musical project too called Pleasure the Priestess.
Yeah, I know you do music.
Yeah, it's.
I remember catching that about you in your videos. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really fun.
I write some stuff here and there, but I have nerve damage, so I can't really play as much now. You couldn't tell by looking at me, but I'm numb from like there all the way through here.
Oh wow!
Can't feel anything. I can still move it. I can still play. I had to rehabilitate it to where I could actually play again, But sometimes it kind of, I don't know, feels weird or hurts or, it goes in and out. But I think all that Pythagorean stuff's interesting.
A lot of people talk about this higher self and lower self, and that implies judgment, right? It means that there's a part of yourself, it reinforces the shadow, all right? Because you're saying that there's part of yourself that should be considered lower or lesser or unworthy, and the higher self is the only good part of yourself. You're creating a dichotomy in yourself right there, and you're reinforcing the shadow. You're never going to get better if you think of yourself as a higher self and a lower self.
And I think a lot of people
will eliminate the lower self.
People will get that idea from the Nag Hammadi text too, and from Gnosticism they'll get that idea. But in Gnosticism, one of the central points is actually that you don't want to have a higher and lower self because that's the fall of Sophia. Is she was split into two.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're trying to fix. Is the fact that you're split in two. And that's. What does Jesus say? Cut a piece of wood and I'm there, or whatever he said, right? Well, what is that? Splitting into two. So there's weird little things like that in those texts. Just even in the New Testament, the Orthodox text.
When the one becomes two, what will you do?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's very alchemical.
Right, and then you have all that talk about coming into a unity and becoming one in Paul's letters. So that idea, I think, is one of the central ideas that was there in the beginning in Gnosticism and Christianity that now is lost for most people, or they never even knew about it. That's the sheeple or whatever you want to call them. Not to get too Alex Jones on you.
Yeah,
so what's your take? What's your take on the singularity? Actually, I'm curious. I know you have to know something about that.
The point beyond which we can even imagine. The point at which we can even conceive of it.
Which begins supposedly
I have no idea by definition. By definition, I have no idea.
What do you think of man merging with machine? Man merging with machine. What's your take on that? Do you think that? Do you think that would be a good thing or bad thing, or I don't know. How do you see it?
It could go either way. You know what? I think that there's going to be some people that use it for right-hand path purposes. They're going to use it to upload their brain, and then they're going to merge their minds together to create a collective mind, and they're going to
a super right-hand man.
They're going to give up their own unique existence. But you know what? In that era, if you were able to upload your consciousness like that,
wait, that's kind of good though.
You wouldn't have to give up your individuality.
Starting to sound like Evan Gilliam.
Hey, that's kind of good though, because then if these right-hand path idiots all merge together, then we only have to find one to hunt them down and get rid of them.
maybe all together, when they all come together, they could create one complete mind. Maybe like a like all the different brain cells, each of them have one, and they could all contribute a brain cell and eventually come up and then realize what a douchebag they've been.
Well, that's what the Jesuit priest Teilhard de Chardin believed. He had a concept called the Omega Point.
Oh yeah,
and he had a similar idea to that, where like all the souls are basically, evolution is leading all souls towards a unification.
Yeah, if you look up emerging technologies on Wikipedia, you'll find Omega Point. We'll talk about that.
I think that there are actual people, scientists that believe in that philosophy and are using technology to try and achieve that. And
Google.
But the thing is, if you were able to upload your mind, you wouldn't have to choose. You could just make a complete identical copy of your uploaded consciousness, and then let that merge with the. You could merge your consciousness with several different group consciousnesses.
Well, yeah, you'd be fully sentient. You could be inside of a plant and inside of a rat and a human at the same time.
Yeah, you could create multiple versions of yourself. Each of them go out and experience things in the same simultaneously in time, and then they could all come back together and re-merge, and then you've experienced 7 different things in the same time period and have the memories of all of those things.
It's like the Docetus fanboy fantasy.
But one of them could decide to go off and not re-merge back into the original.
Right. Oh god, it sounds like Agent Smith. Scary. Now I don't like it anymore.
If you could copy yourself, I think that these kind of concepts allow you to think about these ideas that break you out of the idea that you are just like the concept of reincarnation, that there's this one soul that keeps jumping from body to body into body. I don't think that that's true, and I think that if as above so below and as below so above type of thing, you can look at one realm of reality and it can inform you about other realms of reality. So I think that when your body stops working and dies, essentially, your physical body, the components start, the bonds between the different components start breaking apart, and there's dispersion. And the different components that made up that body go off, and they make all kinds of other different bodies. Not just necessarily the same. It doesn't go back to becoming another human. All of those same elements don't get recycled into a human again. It goes into grass.
All right, because then you'd be just a martyr.
Worms and all kinds of different things, right?
Right.
Well, I think that the soul is does the same thing. The soul is the ego, in a sense. The stuff of the ego. If there is a
like
spiritual
the substance
substance
of the ego, yeah.
Yeah, but because it's non-physical, it doesn't have those same limitations. But I think it does still act in a similar way. I think that it breaks apart and goes off to make new souls, and not necessarily all of those chunks or bits go off and make one soul together again. They go off and disperse into several different ones. And also, while you're alive, you're going around copying parts of your soul into other people's.
Right.
And they're copying parts of their soul into you.
It's like after you have a conversation with someone, you find yourself saying things they do or gesturing the way they do and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, right now, us having a conversation all together, that all of us, we're copying bits of our, if we were able to upload our consciousness, we're taking little bits of that data and copying it onto each other, and everybody who's watching this.
Right.
And if you write a book, you're kind of putting it into a hard copy. Bits of bits of yourself, parts of your data, and when people read that book, they're copying it into themselves.
Yeah, and it's like you kind of don't have a choice over some of the stuff that you actually take.
Or creating an egregore.
Yeah, and I think that that's what the alchemy is you take the raw base material that you're presented with, and you have to forge it into a complete harmonized whole. You know,
Right. So it sounds like with your
burn off the dross and.
Right. With your thoughts on it, it's kind of like there's physics of the soul, you know, the metaphysics, and then the physics of the body, and one is material, one's what we kind of think of as immaterial. Not necessarily material like this, but it's its own material in a way, you know.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah.
It's data, it's information, and information is its own thing, but it doesn't have the same limitations. So you
Right,
can
and
make
information's
copies
interesting too, how it's like, you know, with DNA you have all this, it's just a combination of stuff, or binary, it's a combination of ones and zeros. Well,
It's a
just like
pattern.
words on a
Yeah.
page, you know, like there's that idea that, what was it called? Anthony Peake was talking about it. I think Alex will know. You know where that idea of having that book where every combination of every word ever is written down? And Brad probably knows it too.
Wow.
Are you talking about the Akashic record?
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. That's it.
What about it?
I don't know. I think like I don't know. For some reason I just got this feeling like that ties into that. It's weird. I'll discard that for now.
You know,
It's too much to think about right now.
Speaking of the singularity, I don't know if you realize this, James, that, you know, Ray Kurzweil, he kind of goes into this whole weird, wild speculation that all inanimate matter in the universe will become computer components, and that all suddenly will become linked together to awaken some kind of universal consciousness, which will then kind of proceed to expand to other parallel universes, which is like
Right,
really,
yeah, he has that
really,
idea.
really nuts. I mean, it's interesting, but I mean, I don't know.
Crystallization
Don't you
of
think
Moroma.
some will resist?
Yeah.
You know, what happens
it's
if
like
you
the Borg.
resist?
Yeah,
Are
it's
you
a Borg.
going to get absorbed anyways, you know?
Right.
Forcibly?
Well, hopefully she's hot.
Yeah, it's like the Human Instrumentality Project in Evangelion.
It just reminds me of like really terrible old B movies about like future chicks that come to seduce people in the past or something.
Oh yeah, so this idea of
Like a succubus computer program.
of taking bits of your soul or your data
Right.
and kind of like creating an artifact that houses it.
Right.
It's like a book, right? If you've written a book, it's one way of copying part of yourself onto something that will persist after you go, and your soul will go on to have an influence in the world, you know, possibly long after your physical body has stopped working.
The
And this is a
Egyptian
way to gain a
immortality.
certain form of immortality. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There's this formula for immortality that I heard, and it was like quoted to anonymous, right? Like, who knows who said it, but it really kind of stuck with me, the concept behind it at least. And it's a 3-step process. In order to gain immortality, you need to do 3 things. You need to plant a tree, write a book, and raise a child.
Oh wow.
And
I guess
that's
I'm on step 2 right now.
So in a sense, it's like trying to say, do things that will allow your influence to continue.
Do you have to write your book with the tree you
exist
planted?
even after you're dead? Oh no.
I'm just being a smartass, I
The
guess.
tree hopefully is alive after you're dead.
Yeah.
But hopefully the tree continues
It
to
lives
grow
on as a
and
book.
produce more trees.
It makes many books, and other people write their books on it.
Yeah, look at Crowley. You know, he was able to do that. You know, how much has his influence continued, and how many people just try and become copies of Crowley, and some people even believe themselves to be, and in a sense they are. They've reincarnated a lot of Crowley's ideas, and they're continuing to influence the world based on concepts that Crowley put forth while he was alive.
Yeah.
And they're embodying it in a sense, in a very real sense. They all are reincarnations of Crowley, but they're also their own individual person too.
Hello, Carl Jung.
Hello.
So yeah, maybe it goes beyond that too. Maybe, like the Philosopher's Stone, if you're able to take the salt, sulfur, and mercury, or the body, the soul, and the transpersonal spirit, and create some sort of harmonization to such a strong level, maybe there won't be bonds between a bunch of different components, but maybe it'll be a complete harmonized unit that isn't components that are just held loosely together. And maybe you'll survive the dissolution and gain immortality on a real metaphysical level, and not just through leaving a legacy. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I like how speculative this episode is, though. It's very like Gnostic speculative. It's very good.
Yeah, like anybody who claims to know,
yeah,
they're bullshitting.
Yeah, right. So I guess pretty soon we'll wrap it up because it's been a while, and
yeah.
I'm sure everyone has some stuff they want to do, and I personally need to get back to season 2 of Game of Thrones, and see my celebrity crush in action. But
I haven't gotten to season 2 yet myself, but
it's good so far. You'll like it, and yeah, because the Khaleesi is my wife. Because the call died, so she's free for the taking, and so I figured we'll get a few more questions out of Brad and Alex. If there's any nagging questions you guys need to get out, well, we can, because we're gonna get Jeremy on again in the future for sure.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to
really fun.
Okay, so if you guys want to get a couple questions and maybe a couple each, go for it.
Well, if I ask this question, it might turn into another hour. But
well, I'm not gonna ask any more questions.
I'm just gonna. Well, Jeremy could answer it any way he wants. Basically, my question is, how does he view Satan and Lucifer as the same being? I don't know if we talked about that earlier, or maybe we did.
Yeah, it's an awesome question. I used to think of them as the same when I was young, and then I started getting into the occult understanding of it and Gnostic understanding of it, and I started to think of Satan as being the demiurge and Lucifer as being the serpent and Jesus.
Oh my God, that's kind of how I see it.
But I've kind of moved on from that as well and evolved my understanding of it to more of a Chthonic or like Hades, kind of a gatekeeper type thing, where Satan, as the king of hell that keeps all of the damned souls in hell and keeps them from coming up to earth to bother the living humans that are above ground. It's a symbol of the shadow keeping the repressed parts of ourselves, or the scary stuff, the things that we can't accept, segregated from our conscious mind. And so Satan, to me, is, when I think of that, I think of more as that function that protects the conscious mind from those things. And Lucifer is that same thing, but you've achieved a different relationship with that function of yourself, and it's actually allowing some of it to reach the conscious mind so that you can actually process it. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. It's a gatekeeper, but when you call it Satan, you're in an adversarial relationship with it, where it's trying not to let you see that stuff, and it's trying to scare you away from looking deeper. And at the beginning, when you're an initiate, it's trying to keep you away from it. And a lot of people run screaming back to Orthodoxy because they get scared by something that freaks them out, and it's their own shadow most of the time. Listen to the stories. They've been scared off by their own shadow, literally.
Like a little kid.
And they run screaming back to Orthodoxy because it's comforting. And but if you press through that, you develop you press through the fear to allow yourself to accept truths that are not necessarily comfortable. Then you develop a relationship with that part of yourself that is actually teaching you. It's initiating you. It's bringing the light. It's bringing things from the darkness into the light so you can see them and deal with them and integrate them and understand them and appreciate them for what they are, and not kind of freak out and just run away.
I feel like these last couple episodes are building up towards our Simon episode. It's getting even more teasing because we keep talking about, like, tonight and last night we talked about familiar spirits, or the twin or the shadow, and it's just crazy. I like that. It's pretty good. And what did Brad just change his picture to? Oh, no.
Hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I came full circle, basically. Originally, I thought they were the same. And then I thought they were different, and now I think they're the same again. In a sense.
I'm like that, though. 1 minute, I'm like, maybe it's this, and, then I jump to the next. Give me at the right time of day and the right mood, and my mind changes.
They're just sequences of either letters or a sequence of sounds, frequencies of, air vibrations that we produce with our throats and mouths. It's what it actually means that matters. And I think that right now, the thing that makes the most sense is for me to think of the adversary, or Satan, as the shadow function, because of all the mythology around it, that it's kind of like that Hades function that keeps the damned locked away. And then Lucifer is that same thing, but it's trying to teach you to take over his position, so that he doesn't even have that position. That position isn't even necessary anymore, And that's, I think, what it really means when in Thelema they talk about when you cross the abyss, you leave your holy guardian angel behind. I think it's because you become it. You are it, And but that doesn't mean I want to give up my ego. Just because I've become my shadow, and I are not my shadow and I. It's just all that I am, the complete harmonized self at that point. And so the holy guardian angel was really you the whole time. And that's why when you cross the abyss, you lose it, because you become it.
Right.
It's no longer necessary. But
that reminds me. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's still kind of a different end goal, the left-hand path and right-hand path. Oh, what's that? Is that the guy that you were talking about?
You still have to make
before?
the Toll House cookies thing.
Oh, the guy with the blood-type chocolate?
Yeah. Vanilla today.
Oh yeah. White chocolate.
Strawberry
milk?
Yeah, strawberry milk.
Banana milk.
Oh my god, Brad.
I don't even know who this guy is.
You actually have the potential to actually meet him. You're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
You go knock on the monastery door, say, hello, is Lazar there?
And dress up like a magician and say, dress up like Simon Magus from the old Simon Magus movie.
I'll put on my Egyptian nemesis.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, do that with a platter of cookies. He'll freak out and have a heart attack.
Toll House cookies?
Yeah, make sure you're reading The Soul After Death when you walk up the door. And make sure you're giving out pamphlets about it.
Yeah, that'd be funny. Like you're starting a church of Seraphim Rose.
And say Seraphim Rose is like the Holy Hermaphrodite or something. Holy Hermaphrodite Christ. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, exactly. See, Brad, you're getting too esoteric.
So this guy, you're paying too much attention to this guy. Just ignore him, and nobody will even know who he is.
Right. Now we're giving him too much press, which is you're giving him too much promotion, which is totally against my 48 laws of power obsession.
Yeah, there you go.
Get rid of that picture. We can't seduce young Orthodox virgins with the old Orthodox priests.
Or can you?
Or
Can you?
unless you drug them.
So do you have any more questions, or are you just going to talk about this guy you don't like?
Yeah, Brad, do you have a question? One more question, then we're going to wrap it up.
Are you going to write a book?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes. I'm going to write more than one. I'm in the process of writing a piece for collaborative work for the Luciferian Research Society, which is over 1,000 members strong now. And we're creating a book of shadows for the basically a bunch of people are going to contribute pretty much practical article on some form of occultism, and we're publishing it, and then it's going to help fund the community and the projects of the community, like the convention and things like that. But I'm also writing some books that I'm going to publish that are just me. I've got some rituals that I want to put out that that I tried to create from first principles as much as possible, and not base it off of the mystical traditions of organized right-hand path religions as much as possible. And to give an example of, that's from the
that's going to be the picture
France?
That's from René Le Chateau. That's going to be the picture for this episode. That's the logo. I'm going to put our logo writing over it.
Abandon all hope, all ye who enter here.
Yeah. I figured that would be genius, and it's right after the Cathar episode, so why not? I've got René Le Chateau on the mind.
Yeah, so I got one that it's going to come out with some rituals to help people, with ideas on how to create rituals, examples of how you can create rituals that I've give people inspiration. Like I've tried to create these rituals from first principles, built up from left-hand path principles, and giving them out so people can use them as is, or they can use them as inspiration to create their own. And then I'm also going to create. I'm also partway through writing a book on just like a sequence of lessons, like a curriculum, essentially, for people who want to learn left-hand path occult practice.
Left-hand catechesis.
Yeah, and it's not just ritual practice; it's actual occult practice, like astral work and lucid dreaming and concentration.
All the cool stuff.
Good stuff, yeah.
Well, I definitely look forward to checking it out. You gotta let me know when it comes out.
It's not going to be in this book, but another thing that I think of is really important is worldly stuff. You gotta try and create a situation where you're not poor. You see a lot of occultists that are poor, and that you don't have to be poor. There's ways of, if you're smart and you're into learning about occultism, you should be smart enough to figure out ways of not being poor.
Right.
I
totally agree with that. I think that would be a very beneficial book too.
Yeah, maybe one day I'll come out with a book like that. But I've been putting out some videos about that kind of stuff lately.
In fact, speaking of your videos, how about you take time and plug your YouTube channel so people know where to find you? They can see more of Jeremy Crow.
Yeah, zigguratofenki.org. Redirect
For those who don't know how to spell
channel.
cigarette, please spell that for them.
ZIGGURAT
There you go.
OFENKI.org.
Yeah. Just
And that'll
in
redirect my
case
YouTube
somebody doesn't know.
channel.
I know how you spell it, but you know. Just in
Oh yeah,
case.
Z is the same thing as Z
Yeah.
for Americans.
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead. Off with his head.
Pulp Fiction, my favorite movie.
All right. Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, you got to know I'm obsessed with Tarantino too. I think I let off too much of my obsessions tonight. I think we all have our little obsessions. But
Oh yeah, and if anybody wants to join the Luciferian Research Society, it's not just for Luciferians; it's for all left-hand paths. Like I said, there's over 1,000 members on there already. Luciferianresearch.org.
and if you want after this, if you could send me both of those links, I'll post them on the description box too. You know, in case someone hasn't made it to the end of the episode yet. This was a pretty long one, but I'm sure they'll cycle their way through it eventually. And they have that auto where it leaves off, you know, where you left off on your videos. They have that on YouTube.
Oh
now.
yeah,
all of them.
Cool.
You could have like
Resume,
a bunch of them tracked at one time.
essentially.
Yeah, it has that resume function. That's pretty cool. But it was great having you on, and we look forward to having
thanks
you
for
again.
asking me.
And I think it's awesome. You're going to be doing those books, and you got your websites plugged right here, and maybe you'll hear from some people soon. That'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
All right. So this is
thanks
James, Alex, Brad, and Jeremy Crow, and I hope you guys watching enjoyed the episode, and join us next time at Aeon Arcanum.